Still, if you treat people right, they're going to buy into the culture. And I think that's the main thing, just treat them right.
Welcome to another episode of Friday 5 with Dave Adams. Today, I'm going to be speaking with Harvey Hoskins, CEO, Heather Spitzley, who is Senior VP of HR, and Tori Thelen, Culture and Development Manager at PFCU Credit Union, headquartered in Portland, Michigan. The credit union has $690 million in assets, serves 52,000 members, and has 174 employees. One thing that I found interesting in the bios for Harvey, Heather, and Tori is that they've all served in their experience in credit union work as tellers, as well as in other operational positions, including their current areas of expertise. I'm sure we're going to have a great conversation about organizational culture, how we attract and retain top talent by fostering a really, truly great place to work for our employees. Well, Harvey, Heather, Tori, welcome to Friday 5.
Hi, Dave. Thanks for the opportunity to be here. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Dave. I'm really excited to be here.
Thanks, Dave, for having us. I'm so excited to be here.
Great. Well, reading through your bios, I see the one thing that you all three have in common is that in your years of experience with credit unions and with PFCU in particular, Harvey, you and I have a few more years than the ladies, but you all three have in common that you worked on the teller line and you've worked in various facets of operations, including your current roles. So that's very cool. Today, we're going to continue the conversation that we've been having with credit union leaders about organizational culture, creating, maintaining, enhancing that climate that makes our employees feel excited about going to work and want to get the most out of their respective jobs. And we'll talk about HR management functions and some other things along the way. So let me just start with you, Harvey, and then I'll kind of turn to Heather and Tori. But let's start with that first question of, when you think of culture, organizational culture, why is it important, and what are some of the important elements of that for you, Harvey, as CEO?
Well, as you were going through this, you have to be able to relate to everybody that you're working with and understand what's going on in their lives before we can really understand it and make it work here at the credit union. If we're not part of the outside life, this work life isn't going to be proper either.
So Heather, you're Senior VP of HR and Training. And how do you answer that question, the importance of culture and maybe some of the important elements that go into it?
Yeah. So the way that I like to describe the culture and the philosophy that I always follow is, I believe it was credited to Gandhi, and he said, be the change that you wish to see in the world. And I try to really live that every single day. So really setting that example as a leader and knowing that you're not going to see change unless you're willing to be that change. And so just really following that philosophy and creating an environment that people want to be a part of. And that's what culture is all about, is that having an environment where your employees are proud to be there, they're proud to be a part of your team, and they want to make a difference too.
Well said. So Tori, you are the Culture and Development Manager at the credit union. So I'm sure you have some perspectives on this topic. What do you think makes for a great organizational culture, and what some of the important elements are?
Dave, this happens to be my favorite subject and favorite question. I think both Harvey and Heather could tell you how passionate I am about culture. But for me, culture is all about, it plays a vital role in the overall success of any company. And I think that it's so unique in a way where it's not measured by numbers, but measured by feeling. And that's the ultimate goal of culture, right? Is to make sure that people are coming to work feeling good and feeling like they have a purpose and their role is important to the success of the company. Now, culture is, it can be hard when you start the implementation. we've hit roadblocks ourselves, and sometimes it's just you have to reevaluate and look what changes need to be done and push forward. I would say probably the biggest thing though for culture and implementation is the buy-in. So when you decide that culture is important to your company, you have to live and breathe it yourself. You can't just talk about it and then have that supporting peers around you to help with that buy-in. And at that point, we can start asking the staff to buy into this company culture.
That's great. So Harvey, you and I share these wonderful white beards. Yours is a little fuller than mine, but that suggests that we have a little bit of experience here. You're 32 years at the credit union, not Al's CEO, but certainly during that time in leadership for most of those years. How has it changed? I mean, are there certain things that we're doing differently and emphasizing to create a great culture at the credit union?
I don't know that it's changed a whole lot. I think the people maybe have changed. Everyone's a lot more willing to be verbal in their feelings, sometimes not in the most appropriate ways, but they, members particularly, I know they can get pretty excited, even staff, but at least they're willing to speak up and let us know what they think. And that helps us make the adjustments that Tori was talking about. As we move along, we need to adjust, and there are just different things that come up that you can't stay the same. But you still, if you treat people right, they're going to buy into the culture, and I think that's the main thing. Just treat them right.
I think that knowing you like I do, Harvey, in the years we've worked together, I can say that that comes easy for you. You not to get too informal, but you're an easygoing person. You're by nature, I think, easy to work with, easy to be around, easy to talk to. And Heather, I'll just turn to you and ask you kind of to tag on to what Harvey brought up there about listening and treating people with respect. How do you make that play out at the credit union? How does the leadership at the credit union, you have 174 employees, so how do you walk that talk, so to speak, to make sure that you're listening, you're empathetic, and you're treating people with respect?
That's a great question, Dave. We've actually outlined it in our culture, and we've created a culture at PFCU called My Mark. And My Mark stands for my member, my attitude, my role, and my commitment. And we've very, very clearly defined what those expectations are. And so when you can turn back to what you clearly defined to say, yes, that is in line with our culture, or no, it's not in line with our culture, it really helps to create, that uniformity across the board. So we've really taken the time, and like Tori mentioned earlier, we've had to readjust along the way, but we've really, everything stems back to what we've defined as our culture, and making sure that we're making our decisions from a strategic approach to our daily operational decisions based on the culture that we've defined.
So Tori, expand on that a little bit. Your passion for culture as the culture and development manager at the credit union, how do you see everybody walking the talk? Because it's easy for us as CEOs and senior leaders to say, okay, we need to have a great culture. We need to make sure that everybody feels respected. But are there certain things that you do at the credit union, whether it's Harvey or whether it's the leadership or whether it's the rest of the team, that makes sure that you're fostering that environment where people really enjoy being a part of the team?
No, that's a great question, Dave. I think that it's all about being supportive to our employees. Me and Heather talk a lot about, we have members here at the credit union. Well, our members are the internal members, so that's the staff. So making sure that we're providing the best service we can to our members internally is what we expect them to provide to our external members. And just like external members who give us cues on products and services they want, our internal members give us cues as well. And they might not come out and say that they need support or that they need help or someone to listen to them, but they say it in other ways. So just making sure that you're actively listening and you're making yourself available and making yourself providing time for them to reach out to you and making a presence, even in this virtual world we're in, making sure that you are leaving a presence and saying, I'm here for you no matter what, whether it be process, procedures, or they just want to talk about what's going on in their life.
Yeah, so Harvey, in your 32 years with the credit union, I don't know, I won't try to surprise you with question of, how small was the credit when you started, but the credit union now is probably exceeding $700 million in assets, 52,000 members, 174 employees. Does it get harder to do all of this stuff as credit unions get to be that size in terms of creating a great culture where we treat employees with respect?
Well, actually, I do remember when I came in, we were about $33 million in assets and probably had about 25 employees. So yeah, there's a big difference in trying to just coordinate and work with the group, the executive group that I have, to get things going in the same direction, making sure everybody's on board the ship and moving with the ship. And then, the tough thing sometimes is if they aren't enjoying being on the ship, maybe ask them to get off at the next port or maybe sooner. But it has changed a lot, and the numbers make a difference. We recently went through a merger and just about doubled everything, staff and assets and members. And that was a huge difference for us. And we're having growing pains because of that. We're working through them, but it changed everything. And trying to mix those two cultures and bring everybody into one fold has been a bit of a challenge, but it's worked out well. And I think most of the employees would agree that everything's going fairly well right now.
I chuckle a little bit when you talk about asking someone to get off the ship at the next port. It's never quite that easy. And
No.
it's the thing we all just hate having to do, obviously. But sometimes we're doing not just the organization a favor, but the employee a favor if they're not a good fit. And those are tough decisions that have to be made. But let's talk, Heather, I'd like to start with you as the head of HR at the credit union. Talk about various human resource management functions. So we all know that there's on a spectrum, everything from the job description to the hiring process, the orientation, the management of pay and benefits, and all the things that go into fostering a great culture, and certainly employee development. What are some of the things right now that you feel at your credit union with 174 employees in the realm of HR management? What are some of the things that are maybe most important or most challenging with regard to human resource management?
Well, I think they're all important, but right now I think that it's really about hiring the talent that meets the demand, meets your needs of a culture. You have to hire for culture, and making sure that your talent retention strategies are on point as well. So making sure that your staff is really being those advocates as employees for you, and that you're aligning your business with what you want your culture to be. And so making sure that the attitude that you're hiring matches your culture, that the team that they're going to be on, that they're a good fit for that team, because we all know that we can train the skill, but we have to hire the attitude as well. So
Tori, what are your thoughts on that? And certainly talent retention is the ultimate objective. And when we talk about culture, I mean, that's a huge part of it, is making sure that we're creating an environment where we keep the best talent we can and have them thrive. What are your thoughts on the question about when you look at various facets of HR? I know you're going to say that culture is most important because that's what you do. But when you think about other facets of HR, anything to add on that question about the ones that are maybe more challenging right now?
I think, especially with the last 18 months, I think the challenges could be just remembering that we are the people department, and that everybody's going through, let's say, everybody went through the last 18 months with the pandemic, but understanding that everybody went through it in a different way. I think we do a really good job in the HR and culture department, in our leadership, understanding that each individual has their own wants and needs, and being flexible in how can we as the people department help that person through their situation. So for us, it's just being, I think the most important thing right now in HR, and I work very closely with Heather, is that we want to make sure that we're flexible for our members, internal members, because the situations are completely different, even though we're going through essentially the same thing. So I think flexibility for me would probably be the number one thing, and understanding that sometimes our hands are tied with different laws and regulations that come out, but how can we support that person in a different way?
Thank you. Harvey, maybe take a shot at that question from your perspective as CEO right now. What are some of the things that are maybe a bit more challenging with regard to managing people and HR functions?
I think just working through their challenges, like Tori was talking about. We all go through this differently, and we handle the stress of it and the isolation of it. For me personally, it's tough to stay home as much as I've been and not be interacting with the rest of the staff, just talking to them, seeing what's going on. And I find that really tough and difficult because I am a people person and I enjoy just interacting with everybody and just checking on them. And so that not being able to do that is tough for me.
And that's a good segue. Let's talk about this COVID environment. And, I had an all staff meeting earlier this week, and I try to convey the feeling of hope that I have. Spring and summer coming around, it makes us so much more positive and hopeful. But to tag on to that and say, look, we've got a big piece of legislation with another round of stimulus coming. We've got word that vaccinations are going to be readily available to everyone who wants one, as certainly by July. That is all cause for us to feel more encouraged. But let's talk about the COVID environment as we sort of see the end in sight and work our way to the finish line, hopefully. Maybe your perspective, starting with you. I'll start with you, Harvey. And just you mentioned the challenge of not being able to interact, not being able to be close to each other. What were some of the other challenges, or maybe some of the challenges that you continue to work through with regard to getting back to normal as a credit union?
Well, this all started last year, just after GAC. So it was, we got back from GAC and just started having an executive group to get together and decide, okay, what happens if things get shut down? What do we do? Do we have a plan for that? And within a few weeks, we were from what we referred to as roses and sunshine to hair on fire, because hair on fire being we're shut down, nobody can come in, and you've got to make some adjustments. And so we sat down and decided, okay, what are we going to do? How are we going to do that? And who can work from home? We had to make those decisions early. It was, obviously the executive team could, because we all had laptops, but not everybody else had those. So IT had to, within a few days, a few weeks, get people ready to go out and work from their home, whether it was with a laptop or with their PC and taking it home with them, everything. But we got through it. IT did a fantastic job. The executive team, they stepped right in and took care of things and just worked it through. And the staff, I can't say enough good things about the staff. They were amazing how they just dealt with everything as it came along.
So that's great. So Heather, maybe expand on that. So now, we've dealt with the crisis. I think credit unions have adapted to meeting member needs, starting to get back to being, certainly branches open and a little bit more normal. Certainly member behavior has changed. Their expectations are different now. But my question is, so right now, as you look at it from an HR standpoint, what are some of the issues that you're grappling with? For instance, vaccinations. from what I hear, most credit unions, most businesses are not going to require vaccinations, but many are going to incentivize. And how is the credit union talking about whether incentivizing or how are you going to approach those who choose not to be vaccinated in terms of how you work together?
So we've taken the stance at PFCU that we will not require it, but we will strongly encourage it. And we've built a program around that strong encouragement. So making sure that staff has adequate time to be able to effectively facilitate going to their appointments for the vaccination. And then, you know, we're hearing some of the side effects from getting the vaccination. So making sure that we're not having them feel any financial burden from maybe experiencing symptoms. Instituting some additional days off if needed without charging any sort of PTO or anything to that nature. So just being very proactive about talking about it. I know that we started this conversation. We sent out a communication to staff about a month ago to even get them to think about it. And so, yeah, we've been very proactive to make sure that our staff knows that we're supporting them, we're supporting their decision, and we're going to be here no matter what they decide.
Harvey, any follow-up thoughts on that?
No, you know, like Heather said, we just strongly encourage it, recommend that they talk to their primary healthcare provider and look at their individual situation, because, you know, we don't know all their health concerns and what challenges it might bring to them getting the vaccination. But we do strongly encourage it and are working hard to make time available for them, and either for the vaccination or, like Heather said, in the event that they do have some after effects from the, I believe the second shot is the one that seems to be giving people more problems, but we're going to work with them.
Okay, so let's talk about work from home. I think by now we've all come to realize that some kind of a hybrid work from home model is going to be the new normal. Now, for an organization like Michigan Credit Union League CU Solutions Group, we don't serve the public directly, so it's easier for us to have virtually everyone work remotely. We don't have branches like credit unions do. Obviously, for a credit union, a lot of it has to be business as usual. You need people to be in those facilities serving the members, but certainly there are other positions that may create some cost savings, and you may be able to accommodate certain positions, certain team members to work from home. How are you approaching that, Harvey, in terms of a process, position by position, person by person?
Well, obviously, like you said, there's positions that have to be here, the tellers, the loan member service staff, those people have to be in the building. The other departments, we're leaving it up to them as much as we can. You know, the back office, IT, accounting, marketing, those positions are, some are taking a, like you said, a hybrid where they're in the office 2 days and at home 3 days. Executive team, they're going to be a minimum of 2 days in the office, but from there it's up to them. I know myself, I'm planning on being in the office probably more than I'm not, because that's just the way I want to be. I want to be around the people and make certain that they know we're here to support them and help them in any way we can. So we're just taking all those steps, but it's evolving. I know that initially a number of the people thought this working from home, this is pretty good. But now that they've done it for a while, they're missing that interaction with each other as well. And they're not as convinced that that's how they want to continue this career that they're in and working through. So, but it'll be evolving. We'll be ever going and changing. And it's like everything else. You've got to be able to adapt to the new situations that come up.
So Tori, take your passion for fostering a great culture and making sure that people feel engaged and talk about this work from home, this hybrid work from home. How can you get the best out of a hybrid work from home for organizational culture without having it impact it negatively?
So really, when we were presented with this work from home initiative, and I was one of the departments that got sent home initially, and honestly, we took it as a challenge. So how can we still create engagement and still make people feel like one unit, but all being in separate areas? So we've created programs like we call it the Smile Squad, and we have monthly challenges that go out. Bring your dog to work day, where you submit a picture of you and your dog, and prom-tastic photos, where we dig out all those old photo albums and share with each other what we looked like at prom. And from a training point of view, we really pushed to be virtual, and this last year really pushed us to where we wanted to be, in a sense where it made us think outside of the box. So we still wanted to provide training for our employees for growth and development, but we made them in a digital way, in a virtual way. So we created micro trainings that are 5 minutes or less, and we pushed them out to the staff saying, here's this video on this process or procedure, watch it 5 minutes, do it at your own time. Just creating an environment where people didn't feel like they were forgotten about, that we were still one, we were still participating in different activities together, and they're still getting that opportunity to grow.
And that kind of segues to that last question about what are some really innovative or disruptive things that we can do in the area of HR and culture. And you brought up some of those really interesting ideas. I like the bring your dog to work day, for instance. And I loved how you talked about virtual training as, we were forced to do it, but now we can realize that, wow, if we can master that, that's going to be so much more efficient and effective. Heather, what are some of your thoughts on other kind of outside the box ideas, and whether it's HR specific or not, but things that you think the credit union is learning from this environment?
So one of the things that we are incredibly proud of as part of the HR training team is the launch of our completely virtual onboarding program. And so we didn't take the pandemic, like Tori was mentioning, to say, no, we're going to stop and refocus. We took it as an opportunity to really catapult what we were doing. And so we have taken some time to really design what that would look like. And we have seen that come to fruition. And we actually had our first new hire group go through it over the last couple of weeks. And our efforts really, really paid off. It was, we got great feedback from it. The new staff really enjoyed it. And the wonderful thing about that, Dave, is that you can it increases your talent pool, really. And so when you look at who you're hiring, it's not just necessarily, putting that box of, okay, I can only hire individuals that maybe are going to drive an hour less, because will they really come work for PFCU if they have to drive for more than that? Well, now in this virtual environment, we're able to provide an experience as an employee with us. And you don't have to be near one of our branch locations. You can work at a distance. And I think that's just really helped us to expand, our talent pool, which is fantastic.
Harvey, I know you're really proud of your team, and certainly the conversation here with Heather and Tori reinforces that you have some great talent at the credit union. But maybe you can offer your thoughts on any of the things that Heather and Tori just mentioned, or anything else that has to do with some of the things that are going to become more permanent, I guess. I liked the reference to the virtual training and the completely virtual onboarding. Do you have any perspectives on other things that you think we're going to draw from this and turn them into positives for the future?
Yeah, well, we do 2 full staff trainings each year, one on President's Day and one on Columbus Day. And we've always, gotten together as a full group. But I can foresee where the President's Day training being in February, we may continue to do that on a virtual basis, because we're never certain of the weather. And we've got, if you try to even centralize it, it's tough to find an area that's not a decent drive for some of our people. And so I can see where that may continue and just be the norm for us. And then obviously in the fall, we would have the gathering where we all get together. But the Zoom meetings, they come in real handy. If instead of having people drive from what we refer to as our east side, Duran, Owasso or something, they can jump on a Zoom meeting. You just save 2 hours for that individual. It's a 50-minute drive or give or take. And so they can spend a half hour for the meeting, and they don't have that 2 hours of commute. So those are big steps that I think we're going to be taking. We've also realized that not everybody in a single department has to be in the same building as everybody else has going through this process. So, we can have people working in a call center from here in Portland, even though the call center is located in Duran or our ITM facilities. They're in Duran right now, but I can see down the road where some of those people might be here in Portland or out of Ionia or whatever office is convenient for them. Like Heather talked about, we don't have to hire people for the area where the department is, but just hire the people that we need that fit our culture, that we feel comfortable with being able to do the work that we want to have done.
That's great. Let's wrap up with just a sidebar question on leadership development. And I'll turn to you, Heather. We've been talking a lot about taking full advantage of virtual training. We've talked about hybrid work from home, but for leaders, I suspect that we all have to step up a bit more in terms of compassion for employees and coaching and the way we check in and make sure that everybody's doing okay. I'd like to get some of your perspectives on that, Heather. What's the credit union doing to make sure that your leadership, your managers are more empathetic?
So one of the things that we've done as an organization is focused our efforts on things that are important to the staff, things that are important to the leadership, and maybe unique situations that they're going through in their personal lives. So we've done some stress management workshops. We have been I think as a leader, I know for me, you have to be very intentional about checking in, because you can get easily caught up in your day and you just continue to go throughout that day. And all of a sudden it's 5:30 and it's, time to sign up for the evening. You have to be very, very intentional about checking in with your staff. And one of the things that we've done as a leadership team is taken that virtual environment and instituted quarterly meetings with our leadership team to focus on topics that keep the culture alive. So as an example, we actually just had a session this week on Wednesday, and it focused solely on trust and how you can develop trust within your team, what the ultimate end goal of building those relationships with your team increases collaboration and team unity, and it just really fostering that team spirit. And so we make sure that we take time for that. And I think as an organization, that's one thing that we do really well is focus that dedicated time on that growth and development of our leadership team. So,
and it's so much easier to do that 30 minutes to an hour virtually than it is to pull everybody together to have a conversation about trust. But Harvey, I'm going to give you the last word. With everything we've talked about here today, I realize that the CEO has to play a role setting the tone, knowing when to get out of the way, knowing when to participate. Maybe just share your thoughts from your years of experience on how you approach that, how you know when to get involved, when not to get involved, how to set the tone, especially on some of these things that pertain to organizational culture.
Well, that's what I always tell everybody. I try to stay out of the way. I try to let each of the executives do their job. They're the professionals in that area. I know a little bit about a lot of things, but not a lot about too many things. So it's best if I let them do their work. It's difficult sometimes to know when to step in and when not to. I've screwed up, stepped in when I shouldn't have, and that causes some struggles. But if I the more I stay out of the way, the better it usually works, and let them do their job.
Well, you project empathy, Harvey. You project humility, and I think when it comes to setting the tone, I think that for we as whether it's CEOs or senior leaders or any manager, it's just so important to make yourself human and make yourself vulnerable. Like you just said, we don't have the answers. It's not our job to have all the answers, but it's our job to set the tone, to know when to get out of the way, and then to just make sure that we're fostering this culture, this environment that attracts and retains amazing people. So Harvey, Heather, Tori, thank you so much for a great conversation. Thanks for being on Friday 5.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, what a great conversation with Harvey, Heather, and Tori from PFCU about culture and the important elements of human resource management in this very challenging climate that we're in. I love their emphasis on listening and showing respect and making sure that they're treating their employees as internal members and making sure that that then leads to great member service. A lot of innovations there at the credit union. I like the reference to the Smile Squad, the Bring Your Dog to Work Day, and their emphasis on complete virtual orientations for new employees and getting the most out of the learnings from COVID as we move forward. Thanks again for a great conversation. We thank Harvey, Heather, and Tori from PFCU for a wonderful conversation about organizational culture. Thank you to everyone for watching and listening to Friday 5 with Dave Adams.